Hi guys, welcome to Learn Electronics Repair, and I have some soldering irons on my desk, plus a power supply and a stand. These are AlienTek T90 soldering irons, and they may all look the same because the picture looks the same, but in actual fact there are three different models of this portable soldering iron, plus a number of options when you purchase. So as is the tradition on this channel, let's show you how much this costs first. Let's show you the various options, and then we'll take a look at the ones we have here. And here we are on AliExpress website. So this is the AlienTek official store, and you'll see AlienTek T90, PD 140 watt, DC 28 volts, and so on. Kit C245, C210 and T65. So there are three different versions of this soldering iron, and that's because there are three different type of tips. Now the tips will only fit in the handle that's designed for that tip, and that's due to the size of the tip or the shaft basically being different. But these are very standard types, so you can buy these in many different types, and they're really inexpensive to buy. I'll just show you basically what we have. So this is one of the basic kits. This is the C245. Okay, you can see the price, €37. This is a sale price, but this review will be out in time for you to buy if you wish. Okay, so that's the AlienTek T90B, because it's just the first on the list. Okay, this is the T90C. So this is a T65 tip. This is very similar to the T12 tips in style, probably shorter, but we can compare. I have some of both types here. The price, very much the same. And this is the standard kit for the C210, okay? Again, basically the same price. You'll notice all of these come with a small soldering iron stand. They include the USB-C cable, which is rather nice actually. And they all come with a KU style, that's a knife type tip, in the correct size for that soldering iron handle, okay? But what's really nice about this is the amount of options we have available. I'll just show you. So for example, there we have the type C, okay, with 4 tips, and with the 140 watt charger, there's an EU adapter with it. You still have the small soldering iron stand and the cable. Okay, so basically that one gives you extra tips and the power supply. Considering that's a 140 watt power supply, that's a pretty good deal if you don't already have one. PD 3.1. You can see another option here. This one just has the extra tips. Okay, that's the T65. This is the T90C, but with the desk soldering iron stand. Okay, you see you pay an extra €9 or something, and so on. With the soldering iron stands, you can see you can get all these various options for each type, okay? And that's probably the best selection of options I've ever seen, really, for a soldering iron. So whether you require a power supply or not, whether you require the bench stand or not, they're all optional. In other words, you're only buying what you want, okay? AlienTek have produced a short promotional video for these soldering irons, which actually shows you various things, like they have the soldering iron into basically a jug of water, and then they're measuring the power, 140 watts and so on. So this video actually gives you all the specifications for the different irons, how to set the iron to work with your PD power supply if you have 100 watt or 65 watt, and a lot of other features. It's about 3 minutes or so. So I won't repeat that information. I'm going to link this in the video description, and I'm going to do a practical demonstration of these soldering irons and tell you what I think, my personal opinion. Okay, so we can see how much these kits cost. I have some really interesting news for you guys. So as part of a special free giveaway competition sponsored by AlienTek, and we're going to run this competition at the end of this year, okay? It's free entry for everybody. And one of you is going to win one of these T90 soldering irons. And we have 2 more prizes as well, okay? Find out what? Well, I have 2 more AlienTek reviews coming up. And each of those 2 show the other prizes. So we're going to give 3 prizes away at the end of the year. Now that's definitely got your interest. Let's have a look at the soldering irons. Let's start with the T90A. And we have instruction manual in Chinese and English. Okay. We see the specification there. We also see that the maximum wattage for the T90A is 65 watts. Okay, the tip type, the resistance of the tip. General information on how to use this, which will basically be the same for all of them. Okay, but nice and clear with pictures, and this is big enough to read. Yeah, that itself is a bonus. Here is the little soldering iron stand. It's a press out type thing, so we just push this up. Okay, we have a basic soldering iron stand there. The C210, or I'll just mention this in case it confuses people. C210 is actually the type of handle, and T210 is the type of tip. Okay, that's why you'll often see C or T. But to be honest, they're often used interchangeably, so you'll see sometimes offered for sale C210 tips. Yeah. So this is the tip. These review samples, which were provided free by AlienTek, all come with a single tip. Yeah. We see the KU or knife tip. But as I showed you previously, you can actually buy kits with multiple tips, or you can easily buy your favourite type of tip for a few euros or dollars. Okay, soldering iron. Well, these are a portable iron, okay, with a little cover, so you can easily carry this around even when you've been using it. It won't burn you or a hole in your pocket, okay, or tool bag. Fitting the tip is very easy. Just push in, okay, and it grips very firmly, so it's not going to rotate or slide around, not easily anyway. And power, of course, by USB-C PD 3.1. This is the cord. This feels like a silicone cord, certainly heat resistant cord. And not only does this feel like a good quality lead, I've measured this and it's 1.2 meters long, which is quite generous actually. That's 4 feet for those of you using Imperial. And I would say that's a really nice addition, even if you don't buy the power supply from AlienTek, you get the lead. I think this is also possibly a quality control thing, because the performance of the soldering iron is going to depend not only on the power supply, but on the method of delivery, the lead. Yeah, this is important. So when you use the lead that comes with the iron, you know it's going to be suitable. Yeah, otherwise you'll end up using something of your own which may not be suitable for other reasons, like it's not heat resistant, or it can't handle the 5 amps power if the thing is running at full power. Or maybe it can handle the 5 amps, but due to the resistance of the lead, the full voltage doesn't get to the soldering iron. Talking of power delivery, here is the AlienTek power supply. This is surprisingly heavy, really, for a small power supply. This is really quite heavy in the hand. 140 watts, GAN, PD 3.1, okay. You can also run these soldering irons on QC 3.0 as well. Outputs, PD 3.1 for your soldering iron, but also 2 PD 3.0 and a QC 3.0 connector on there as well. The power supply has these little pull-out clips. This is like an American style socket. Now, I will just mention, when you buy the kit, it does come with an EU adapter. For the UK, I guess you have to get your own adapter. I didn't see one on the AlienTek page. Mine just came like this. Now, this is probably because this wasn't sent as the retail kit to me. AlienTek sent me a number of other items to review, which are coming soon, and they sent me a power supply separately. Fortunately, I've managed to put together, because I have stuff around, a suitable plug, okay? But normally speaking, it comes with a small adapter that fits directly onto the power supply, which is no doubt more rigid, firmer and safer than this. Okay, so that's how we're going to test the soldering irons. We're also going to use the desk stand. So this actually comes in 3 pieces with some bolts already included, so you just bolt this together. It holds a soldering iron, but it doesn't sit level, not on the 210 or the 90A version. I'll try the other ones. It stays in there, it's not going to fall out. It just doesn't sit directly level in it, okay? We have space here for some more tips, spare tips, and obviously a little sponge there. So we'll use that stand. And now we'll just talk about power. So this version, T90A, C210 or T210, this is a very fine tip. These are designed for very fine work. You've seen me review these soldering irons before. Okay, this is really for SMD soldering of small components or any sort of fine soldering. And these tips are rated at 65 watt. Okay, despite this being a lower power, because the tip is so small, this one actually is the fastest to heat up, and heating time on these 2 to 3 seconds. Okay, so that is the T90A. Let's take a look now at the T90B. So you can see it's same dimensions, basically looks identical to the T90A apart from the model number. Same design, and this takes the chunkier T245 tip. Okay, same style. So this is ideal to make a direct comparison. Okay, so that is the T210, quite a lot smaller and also narrower, which is why you can't have one handle that fits all here. You choose your model. This is much chunkier, designed for heavier work. Again, simple pushing. It went in quite solidly. You can rotate it, but it won't rotate in use. Okay, and that is the T90B. This is 140 watts. So this, to get the full power, you need PD 3.1. That's 28 volts at 5 amps. Okay. And lastly, we have the T90C. This has the T65 tip, which is already fitted on this one. And this is much larger again, okay? Although this is called a T65 tip, which may make you think it's 65 watt, it's 130 watt. So it's slightly lower than that one, but very comparable, to be quite honest. And this is much like a T12. T12 being these type of tips. So these were really the first of these integrated heater soldering tip cartridges that were available on the market, okay, at least as far as I know. These are longer, so although that's the same type of fitting, it is a shorter tip, okay, than these. I have seen other soldering irons which take this type of tip, and again, they're readily available on AliExpress. Now we've seen the difference between the 3 models. You've probably got a better idea which one would suit your type of work. Or you may decide you need more than one, okay? But you know, these days, I've mentioned this before, the days when one soldering iron suits all our jobs, they're long gone. Let's put these through the paces. So we'll start with the C210. This is the smallest, this is the 65 watt. Power on. This boots up, it has a Chinese logo. You can change the boot logo, put your own logo on. Okay, switch on, there we go, 300 degrees. Yeah, this just easily lets me change the temperature. I prefer to solder it around 380. Everybody has their own preference. That's the temperature I normally use, and again it goes straight back to that very quickly. Okay, we can also program presets with this as well. We can see here this is drawing 20 volts. Okay, you can see the wattage there, so the wattage will vary depending on what you're doing with the soldering iron. The more heat you draw, the more wattage it will provide. Here's a nice chunky bit of solder. Let's have a look. Yeah, you can see how it goes up to 14 watts to do that. 15. So you can see it's responding very quickly. These are scrap T-con boards out of old TVs. They have very heavy ground and power planes in them. This one obviously has been well used for demonstrations, but let's remove a few things, maybe solder a few things. For example, this one hasn't been previously desoldered, so this will have lead-free solder on, which is harder to work with. Bit of flux in there. I normally add leaded solder when I'm doing this, but let's try without. This is more difficult for the soldering iron, but let's see how well it works. So, yep, I burnt my hand on that bit I unsoldered previously, by the way. That's why I jumped. So even without additional leaded solder, that worked very well in actual fact. Let's try another one. This time I will use my chosen method anyway. Okay, bit of leaded solder. Get hold of the component. Very easy. Can this desolder this big chunky capacitor? This is where you would normally use a chunkier soldering iron, to be honest, but let's see. So again, flux. We will add leaded solder, give it at least some chance of doing this. Okay. I will just add, by the way, the knife tip is not my favourite tip, but I can use them. As you can see, I can use them. If soldering irons come with them, I often use them to demonstrate. Let's see, will it actually do this big one? Oh yeah, look at that. That was easy. And to be quite honest, if you can desolder it, then soldering it back on is not difficult. Okay, there we go. I'll try one of these transistors. Normally I would use hot tweezers to unsolder these. You can do it with a soldering iron. It's not the easiest thing to do, but why not try it? And we can compare with the other tips. Okay, so again we will put flux on. Leaded solder. Okay. I'll just mention while I'm doing this, by the way, all these soldering irons have a auto sleep mode. So rather than having a timer after which they cool down or go to a lower temperature, this actually senses the movement when it's in your hand. So when you put it back in the stand, it will just effectively cool down, which saves the life of the tip basically and a bit of electricity. Does this one want to unsolder? As I say, this is not the easiest thing to do, but yes. And he did it pretty well. Okay. So that's the T90A. Let's try one of its bigger brothers. And here is the T90B. Well, start. You see a little bit slower warming up, but the tip has a lot more thermal mass. Again, I'm just going to adjust the temperature to my favoured 380. Okay. There we go. Let's see how well this works. Well, we have that big blob of solder. I'm sure it's going to make very short work of this. Yeah, no problem at all, of course. There are not so many components left on my scrap T-con boards. I need to find some more because these are a really good example when you're testing soldering irons due to the heavy ground planes or power planes in them, but with no added leaded solder. Yeah, easy as you would expect. We'll try this transistor. Just pick that bit of flux up. So we'll add some leaded solder to this one. Okay. There we go. Right, how well does it work? So heat from one side, a quick touch on the other side. You can see that's coming loose. already. I wouldn't say it's any notably better at this than the other one, but there again, you can't really make a direct comparison because depending where you are on the board will determine how many heavy power planes and ground planes. Okay, we can try a transistor again, see how well it works with this one. So flux, leaded solder. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Heat from one side, it'd probably come off actually, if not just touch the other leg. Yeah, and then the whole thing comes loose very easily. Okay. In actual fact, you can see I was actually making a better job of this with the little soldering iron. It came off, but it was easier. You saw, it was easier. I'll try another one just to make sure that wasn't a fluke. Okay. Yeah, we have one on this board. Okay. Again, as I mentioned, I would normally use hot tweezers for this anyway, but we try. It's off. It's just what it is here. I'm sure you can see it's the size of the tip. The other one was just better suited to this type of work. Okay. To get the heat in. So yes, I can do it. I can do it better with the other one, okay? But this isn't specifically designed for that type of work. This is for working on larger soldering jobs than the other iron, okay? I see some chunky resistors here. We'll try one of these. This is where it may do rather well because it's longer, so I can get heat into both sides easier, okay? Yeah. Okay. Once again, I'll just mention that the handle doesn't really sit properly in here. Yeah. That's the one disappointing thing I found. I think it's the best way. It works. But I would have thought it would sit in there more precisely. Okay. Let's try the biggest one. Or physically biggest one at least. Although this is the higher wattage. Here we go. Well, that seems to be set to 80 degrees for some reason. Yes, it was set to 80. Okay, 380. So, again, larger tip takes a little bit longer to warm up. This is a 130 watt. And you can see the wattage here as it was heating the tip. Let's see what this one does. Without leaded solder. Very easily, of course. Let's try the transistor test. So, with leaded solder. Okay. Other side. Will it unsolder? Once again, this makes it awkward to do this. I can try from one side. Very difficult to get any heat into that side. So you can see this isn't really suited for this type of work. Now you can see why that little C210 was so good for this sort of thing. Okay. You can't really get the heat exactly where you want it. So the bigger the tip, the more difficult this becomes. You can see that now, yeah. Yes, it's unsoldered. But I know which one I would prefer to use for that sort of work. I will just reiterate that the KU or knife type tip is not my favourite type, nor is it the type I have most experience with. I much prefer to either use a BC3, this type, or BC2, which is slightly smaller, or this type of tip, which is the bent conical tip. I find this very good both for SMD soldering and for drag soldering, although I can use the BC3 tip also for that. So those are my preferred weapons of choice and the ones I have most experience with. But we'll also mention that there are other types of soldering, and we use those soldering guides for SMD soldering, very small components, and we could clearly see that the C210 was the best suited for that job, because that's what it's designed to do. Let's put these soldering guides through the paces once more with a completely different type of soldering. But again, something we commonly do. So here we have 3 crimp terminals, but I'm not going to crimp them. We have 3 bits of wire, all identical. Okay, and we're going to try to solder the crimp terminals onto the wire. And we're going to hold them in this little third hand, as it's called, which actually makes this a little bit more difficult because this is soaking heat out of the job at the same time. Okay, I'm going to try first with the smallest tip, the C or T210. I'll use the same method for all. Now this may not be the best method, it's my method, okay, but we will do them all the same way. So there is our terminal. What I would normally do is get some flux onto the wire and tin the wire. I'd normally use 0.8mm leaded solder for this. I'll leave the temperature set as it was at 380. Can we tin the wire? Well, yes, we can. Now we'll insert this into the terminal. Okay, just let it focus on that for you guys. I usually add a little bit more flux at this point. I'll try holding the wire with my fingers, but it's a bit short, so I may end up using pliers. So again, we'll come in here with some solder. More solder. Okay. And we have it. It's hot. I'm managing to balance it. So it did it with a very small tip. Okay, let's have a look. That seems to be very well attached, to be quite honest. Okay, yeah, a decent joint. Now we will try the C245. So again, power up, on. Okay, bit of flux on the wire, tin the wire, and it did that much easier. I could feel straight away, I think you guys could see that. I think you can see that was easier to get solder onto the wire with that. As before, put the wire in, we can just see the end of it there. Bit more flux, solder. Yes, but a little bit more. So this is clearly designed better for this type of work, as you would expect. Nicely soldered, at least as good as the other one, possibly better in actual fact, but much quicker and easier. And now with the T90C with the T65 tip. Okay, flux, yeah, it just tinned, yeah, no problem, didn't even have to think about it. Insert the wire, little bit of flux, solder, Yeah, this was clearly intended for this sort of job. And again, this is not my favourite tip type. It's hot. Once again, maybe just a little bit more on this side to get a more even joint. Okay, you can see that. And that's definitely soldered. And there we have it, the T90. What did I like? Well, I didn't mention this before, but these are very slim compared to most portable soldering irons. I've tried others which have the covers, but they're a bit chunkier. These actually fit nicer in the hand, okay? I particularly like the fact you can buy these in a variety of different kits. So with or without the desk stand, with or without the power supply, and also with different power supplies, 100 watt, 140 watt, with one tip, with 4 tips. So it's very easy to configure this to what you need, okay? The T90A really excelled at that micro soldering. This is one of the nicest ones I've used. I've used other nice ones as well, by the way, but the price is particularly attractive of this one. And again, with the multiple options, it's easy to get what you want and pay for what you want or need and not stuff you don't need, okay? T90B, T90C, I'd say very similar in performance. I think it depends on what type of tip you really prefer. Very similar wattage. So really, yeah, I think that comes down to the type of tip you want to use, because there are differences in what's available in the different styles, C245 and the T65. So that may be your deciding factor. But if you want a chunkier soldering iron, yeah, they work very, very well. And I gave them a fair test on a different type of job. These are more cumbersome for the small micro soldering, but you'd expect that anyway, okay? Having said that, I think the C245 with a bent conical tip in would be the best choice for drag soldering, which is a technique of its own, okay? What else did I like? The fact it comes with a good heat resistant silicone USB cable, okay? Even if you don't buy the power supply, they still supply you the lead. And that, I think, is the first time I've seen that, to be quite honest, and a very good idea. To me, that makes some difference, especially at the price again. What was I a bit disappointed with, you know full well, the stand, the soldering irons don't really fit the stand properly. And by some strange coincidence, my KSG T12, which lives in this old AlienTek stand, which is not ideal, actually fits it. Yeah, so I think I found a use for that. It actually fits, okay. Maybe buy it with the stand anyway and use that with your other iron. But it is a little bit of a shame that these don't really fit into there. Yeah. Another great thing I didn't mention, by the way, but I will now, you can use these with a power bank, so they truly are portable. So I'll put the links in the comments. You can go and buy whichever of these if you fancy one, or even more than one, in whichever configuration and style you prefer. Okay, let me know if you do buy one, and let me know which one you prefer and maybe why. Possibly will depend on the type of work you do. And as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the year, we have a free competition sponsored by AlienTek. This is a prize draw, a giveaway. I'll announce that a little bit later in December, so you'll be able to actually enter. And it's very simple to enter. Just add a comment to the entry video, not this one, okay, because this one doesn't count. But when we open the competition, just post, A, make sure you're already subscribed on the channel, and B, just say, I want to win, and that's all you really need to do. And I will just add that the one we're giving away is not one of these three you've seen used for the review. It will be brand new, and it will be shipped directly to you from AlienTek. So look out for the competition opening, which is going to be just after Christmas, and a day or two after Christmas, and the draw will be just after the new year, okay? There'll be other prizes too, thanks to AlienTek, so hope you enjoy that, and we have a few more reviews coming. Last thing, yeah, give these ones a thumbs up. If you want a portable iron suitable to use on the desk, it's a good option. Okay, hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to seeing you all soon again on Learning Electronics Repair. Ciao for now, guys.